A word of warning, this podcast explores graphic and disturbing stories and includes some strong language. It therefore may not be suitable for our young listeners or other folks who may find it disturbing. Hello and welcome to True Crime News, the podcast covering high-profile and under-the-radar cases from across the country every week. I'm your host, Ana Garcia. Our case this week, it's being described as a real-life version of the movie Taken. That's the movie where actor Liam Neeson jumps on a yacht to save his daughter who has been kidnapped and trafficked. Well, this case is from Long Island, New York, where a father of a missing 14-year-old girl says that he found his daughter on a docked boat and rescued her. She had been missing for a month. Police have charged a 64-year-old man with rape and kidnapping, and the DA says more people may be charged. We're recording this on Friday, January 10th of 2025. Our guest today is Phillip Hamilton, a criminal and civil defense attorney based in New York, a legal analyst who you see on TV all the time, and a dear friend of the show. Phillip, welcome. It's so good to see you.
And Happy New Year. Always good to see you. Thanks for having me back.
Happy New Year. Yes, Happy New Year to everyone. This is the first podcast of 2025. Unbelievable. January marks like 5 years that I've been doing this podcast.
Wow.
That's crazy. Wow. Crazy. All right. So let's get to this case, which is both frightening and disturbing. It's from Patchogue, New York, which is on Long Island. Now, for 3 weeks, the parents of a missing 14-year-old had been pleading with the news, pleading with social media to help find their daughter. The dad said that he received an anonymous tip that his daughter was being held on a yacht. And then the father, and we'll get into the details here, followed up on this tip, finds the boat docked in a marina and rescues her. How crazy is this?
Let's be, especially starting the year, grateful, thankful. She's okay. She's back in his arms. I heard a quote on his end that said that the feeling whenever he gave her the hug was something that just even for a parent himself was unimaginable when she was back in his arms. So just thank God all's okay on that end. Facts being crazy notwithstanding, Anna.
Yeah, the facts on this one. It's also unbelievable that when he executed this rescue, that no one got hurt, that he didn't get hurt, that she didn't get hurt. So that's extraordinary. I mean, getting onto a yacht and you don't know, what's happening? Of course, I understand the desperation of a parent where, he says while he notified the authorities, he didn't have time to wait. He was like, if it's going to get bogged down with a search warrant, I don't have time for this. And, I realize as an attorney, if he were your client, you may or may not have advised there, but I get that, right?
No,
I don't have time to wait.
Yeah, you give the advice, but as a parent, I get it. Professionally, yeah. I give the advice, hey, maybe wait for the authorities, but personally, parentally, I get it. I get why he had to do what he had to do.
Yes. So the dad is Frank Gervasi, and he clearly, for those of you who are listening and can't see, he looks like a tough guy. I mean, he sounds like a tough guy, but he looks like a tough guy. He's got a fully tattooed face, a big beard, muscles, and it's still a miracle that this dangerous thing that he pulled off, that he did not get hurt. So the person charged here is 64-year-old Francis Buckheit. He has been arrested on charges including rape and kidnapping, and the DA says that he and others could face additional charges. Also, he was indicted yesterday by a Long Island grand jury. I have a question for you there, Phillip. So he gets charged by the police, but then there is the indictment. Is that do you need both?
So when the police arrest you, they're going to point to certain areas within the penal law that they feel as though there's probable cause to believe you committed a crime or an offense, right? So when you come in, they're going to say, we believe that there's probable cause on these particular arrest charges. District attorney, here's the defendant, do whatever you're going to do. So the district attorney's office is then going to, especially here in New York, they're going to look at the evidence. They're going to speak with witnesses. They're then going to put that evidence and those witnesses, if they so choose to move forward on a felony charge, they're going to put all of that into the grand jury. A grand jury here in New York made up about 23 members of the community. They hear evidence from witnesses. They see documentation, videos, you name it. They take all the evidence in. They look at what they're dealing with, and then they will be the ultimate determination as to whether or not there's enough evidence to move the case toward a felony trial, right? So in New York, if you are indicted by a grand jury, what that means is that they've reviewed the evidence. They believe that there's reasonable cause to believe that the defendant committed said crimes. Now, in this case, the indictment is still sealed, right? So we haven't been able to open it and see exactly what they've indicted him for. But presumptively, it was an arrest charge. You'll see kidnapping on there. You'll probably see endangering the welfare of a child. There may be a sexual abuse. There may be different offenses that there's evidence that's been heard that we within the media don't even know as of yet, right? So when that indictment comes back, we'll see exactly what they heard. But that's the specific distinction between indictment and arrest charge.
So a lot has happened in this case because, she was gone for almost a month and the parents were obviously doing everything they could to get as much attention to see if anyone knew anything or had heard anything. So I think in order to understand, where she ended up, there's a lot we don't know. Let's start with when she was last seen and when she disappeared. So according to police, the girl, and we are not naming her, the father and mother during the missing period were putting her photo out, of course, and her name and everything. And even though after her rescue and after the arrests, the father has posted his own videos and still used her name and her photos, we are not. She's a minor and she's believed to be the victim of a sexual crime. So we are not naming the girl, even though you may have seen or heard of her elsewhere. So she was last seen at her home in East Patchogue around 5 p.m. The New York Post reports that she left with someone that she met online. She jumped in their car. And according to Frank, that's the dad, the video footage that he has of her doing that doesn't indicate to him whether she was forcibly taken or she went willingly. But there's another part of this that's very bizarre. She wasn't wearing shoes, according to news reports, but she was wearing an ankle monitor, according to her father, which then was eventually cut off. And I'm sorry, we don't have any context for you. Phillip, can you think of a reason a 14-year-old would have an ankle monitor on?
I believe the family may have done what's here in New York known as a PINS petition. PINS is an acronym, PINS. I believe the acronym is person in need of supervision, right? And sometimes like parents that may or may not be having certain issues with their children will make a petition for a PINS. Part of sometimes what the state and or Child Protective Services, you name it, will do if you're in that situation where you need help with your child. Maybe they're having issues with going to school, or there may be some other areas where from a mental health standpoint, you're just concerned that like putting them out there, it doesn't even necessarily have to do anything with malice or that it's a bad person or a bad kid.
Or it could crime. It has nothing.
Or a crime or anything like that. Really could just boil down to some mental health related issues or just you need additional oversight over your child. I believe there may have been a PINS petition and that may have been why the ankle monitor was there.
That's fascinating. I didn't even know that that was an option.
It is a burden as a parent if you're going to go that route within the court system and try to get that level of oversight. It's a heavy burden that you have to meet. But at the end of the day, I think that may be the underlying reason as to why that was there.
So Frank has shared, this is the dad with multiple news agencies, that his daughter had been struggling with substance abuse. So that could give you some perspective. We don't know. That is what he shared. And that is also partly, first of all, a 14-year-old goes missing. Everyone worries. The parents lose their minds, obviously. But then if you have the additional worry that she may then be more susceptible and less clear-headed in dangerous situations or potentially dangerous situations, it just can undo a parent. So one day after her disappearance, she was seen on surveillance video at a motel knocking on doors before disappearing. A 14-year-old at a motel, that is not good. Like that is very troubling, very scary.
Well, objectively. And then, to your point, if there are some issues We don't know. Again, we're just discussing what's kind of been put out there in the media at this point. But if you're having issues with drug addiction, and like you said, you're not fully clear headed, and then to think that your daughter is dealing with those issues and out in the world in motels, yeah, it's a very scary thing to think about.
It's very frightening. And they certainly, I think everything that they did between getting the police to take them seriously, which we know when you have a teen who is at first believed to be a runaway, and this may have started as a runaway. It's unclear to us. She left the house. Was the intention just to go out for the evening and then something horrible happened? Was the intention just to leave? We don't know the answers to any of this. But that, as you know, we've had certainly here in Los Angeles, not teens, but we've had some very high profile missing people. And how do you handle that from the police perspective? I don't think there's ever going to be a family that's ever going to be satisfied with how the authorities handle a missing persons report.
Not unless they're brought home within the hour. But outside of that, there's always going to be this could have been done. Or, families at times, Anna, will bring in the private investigators. In this case, we know that the father really kind of went to, the airwaves, so to speak, and social media, just doing any and everything that could be done to try to get eyes on his daughter or location. And, ultimately lucked out because it sounds like someone did become aware of that and touch base with the family. But you and I will keep talking that through.
Every year, people set all kinds of New Year's goals. Maybe yours is to lose weight or to finally clean out your garage. But did you know that only 8% of people will stick with their resolutions all year long? That's right. 8%. But I have an easy New Year's resolution for you that is simple to keep and won't take up much time. With Acorns, you can lock in years and years of healthy money habits in just 5 minutes. That's all the time it takes to open your account and start automatically saving and investing your money so it has a chance to grow. I've set many resolutions over the years, and I know that it's hard to always stick with them. But with Acorns, it's simple to build a routine while you've still got that fresh start feeling. Acorns makes it easy to start automatically saving and investing so your money has a chance to grow for you, your kids, and your retirement. You don't need to be an expert. Acorns will recommend a diversified portfolio that fits you and your money goals. You don't need to be rich. Acorns lets you invest with the spare money that you've got right now. And you can start with $5 or even just your spare change. It's so important to invest and plan for your future. I know that it can seem hard to get started, but truly, Acorns make it simple. It's a great way to begin investing in your future. Head to acorns.com/truecrime or download the Acorns app to start saving and investing for your future today. Paid non-client endorsement compensation provides incentive to positively promote Acorns. Tier 1 compensation provided. Investing involves risks. Acorns Advisors LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. View important disclosures at acorns.com/truecrime. So Frank believes that whoever picked her up that night believes that they removed that monitoring bracelet on her ankle, and he believes probably gave her drugs. And Frank told the New York Post that he believes that while she was under the influence and kept in a state of induced state with drugs maybe administered to her, that then she was abused, as he says, by multiple creeps. It just sounds very frightening if you have a young woman who is not aware of what's happening and then others are abusing her in the process. It's too much for the brain, too much for the heart. So the father has always believed that she was held against her will. He told several news outlets, this is a quote, "I do believe that she would have been home at this point. And then he had a message to the captors, 'Let my baby go. We're definitely coming for you.'" So he had a very clear gut feeling on this one. And it appears based on the charges, he might be right.
It appears he might be right. And, if he is, again, that's a really, for a parent, sad thing to think about. I mean, there's going to be so much within the course of an investigation. From what I was able to see here in New York, looks like you had the Suffolk County Police Department, which, for those who aren't familiar with New York and Long Island, there's two primary counties. There's Nassau County, which is closest to the city, Suffolk County, where the Hamptons are a little bit further out east. You have Suffolk County PD on there. The U.S. Marshals, I heard, were kind of involved in the investigation and the search. So, that then brings the question of, well, are the feds potentially going to jump into this? Because, especially here in New York, where you have had just a hotbed and a foundation of, sadly, a lot of sex trafficking that, like, if may originate here and then work its way out through the country or throughout the world. I wouldn't be surprised if ultimately the feds, at some point, depending on how the investigation goes, may make a determination to jump in, take the case.
Because the fear is on behalf of the family, and I think it's a very logical fear, if she was being held on this boat, is a big boat, that she could have been taken elsewhere on the boat. She could have disappeared, gone out of the country, and that, not to reference, I mean, it mimics almost what happened in the movie Taken, where the daughter in that movie is being held on a yacht by very rich people and then being trafficked. So I could see where that would be a fear. I could see where that would be a huge fear. And also a little bit more context about what you said about Suffolk County. The DA on this case is the same DA that is prosecuting the Gilgo Beach serial killer case. Rex Heuermann. And at the heart of that case is also whether sex workers were specifically targeted in that area. So it's an issue. And that's like one of the biggest cases we're following in the country right now. So same DA on that. So let's get back to how the father says he got this tip. So he posted a lot of flyers everywhere that he could, physical flyers, right? He offered, after 11 days that she didn't come back, offered a $15,000 reward for her return, started a GoFundMe. So ultimately a tip came in, and this one's fascinating. This is what he told Dr. Phil. He said that the tipster said that she, it's a woman, is how he was revealed, was with the daughter when the first tip came in, and that when he's talking to the tipster, that he wanted a confirmation, because he didn't believe it. He thought this was fake.
Which sadly always happens in those situations. You get the little spoof calls or the, little fraudulent calls or what have you. So.
Yes. And we've seen that. And it's so sad when that happens to families. Yeah. So he said he wanted confirmation. He said, describe to me my daughter's tattoo or tattoos. I don't know if she has more than one. And the tipster was able to identify a very specific thing. Again, we don't know whether any of that would have been on the flyer. I'm not saying that, but this was enough for him to believe the person. So according to the father, he believes it's possible that the tipster may have been an active participant in what was going on. We have no idea. These are his words to several news organizations and to Dr. Phil in the New York Post and the Daily Mail. I think it's important here, these little bits and pieces. He says that the tipster felt remorse. Mm-hmm. So this is the conversation that's going on with the father, right? And he's in real time trying to analyze whether this is useful information. And that because of the remorse, she was compelled to call him to assist him, and that she stayed on the phone. This is very telling. And Phillip, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. She stayed on the phone with Frank for the 20-minute drive that he made from where he was at the time the call came in to where the boat was. And that when he arrived at the location, the tipster was there, said she was too scared to get back on the boat, and warned the father, be careful of going on there. It's almost like he's a detective.
When your child's missing, like we said earlier, what else are you left to do. I mean, especially if you're a loving parent and you have a heart and a warm body, right? Like at the end of the day, that's going to be what you do. So yeah, he very much so became a detective. You can go back, as I did last evening, just preparing for us to have this conversation today, look through his social media. I mean, the man for essentially like 17 days in a row was just documenting and memorializing exactly what he was doing, information that he was learning, trying to put out everything that he could from, a siren emergency standpoint that like, I am looking for my daughter. He very much so was a detective. And, he better be very thankful. And I'm sure the family is that they got that call from that tipster, no matter where or how that tipster is involved and or enmeshed in this whole situation. Like you said, on that boat can easily leave international waters, right? That boat can go places that would have made it much more difficult for him to just walk onto that dock into that boat and get his daughter. And he better be very grateful that it was able to just work out like that, as opposed to any other way, which could have been way worse. Very lucky father.
What are your thoughts on, and this is, we're taking Frank's word that the tipster says that she was part of this, allegedly part of this. So what risk is there? What exposure is there for this person? Should this person, in your opinion, be charged as part of this investigation? It's a mitigating factor that she called to save the child. Do you see what I'm saying? It's so complicated.
Oh, and I see what you're saying. And I mean, look, I don't want to necessarily say the elephant in the room, but, could this tipster also themselves have been a minor? Right? Like there's not really a lot of information that's been put out thus far. We just know that there was a tipster, but was this tipster, unfortunately in some way, induced or, fraudulently brought into that situation and just happen, are they a runaway? Right? Like let's just put it out there. Is that person a runaway? Happened to see his daughter, then put two and two together on social media and just said, look, I got to make a call, right? Like that family is over there just, almost dying in regards to this. I know where their daughter is. Let me just put in this call, right? Like it could have been that. Now, of course, if this is an older person that was, in some way involved in these activities, then, I don't know, at a certain point, do they end up becoming a co-conspirator in some larger sex trafficking ring? Or do they potentially, to your point with mitigation, do they become a cooperator for the prosecutor's office? Or if the U.S. Attorney's office decides to take it, any number of things can happen, but it's just going to depend on what's this tipster's role. Are they actually a part of whatever's going on maliciously and criminally, or were they a victim themselves?
Yeah. Yeah. And how long was that person exposed to whatever was going on? Right. and allegedly, let's say, with that girl? Was it a short period of time, or are we talking the weeks that she was missing? I don't know. I don't know. I am, as a parent and as a human, appreciative of someone trying to do the right thing. But then when it is spawn of an act that appears to be so dangerous to another, then I do want some level of justice.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when that indictment's unsealed, it's almost like if we had this conversation next week and then you and I were able to take a look at exactly what is going to be spelled out, like in the investigation. Probably at that point, there'll be able to be a press conference from the Suffolk County DA's office, right? Like it's going to be those bits and pieces of information that then will lay the ground in terms of who this tipster is. Is it someone that justice is going to, demand that they be held accountable for some malfeasance? Or again, and unfortunately, are they a victim? Here you have a minor in this situation. Maybe if the tipster is a minor, I mean, that's all super problematic.
I have another question here, Phillip. So, the father said he did call the authorities, but he wasn't waiting on them because he didn't want legal bureaucracy to delay anything. I understand that. However, here's my question. Because there wasn't a search warrant, at least initially, or maybe there was, I guess what I'm asking, I know I'm not asking this really clearly, is any evidence on that boat, because it's all coming from the perspective of the father's reporting and then the daughter's reporting, what then is or isn't compromised? Or then do the police go on to the boat and then search and there may be more evidence? That's the stuff we don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, to answer your question in the super abstract, Could certain things have been compromised by him just walking onto that boat, which may be an active crime scene? Of course. From a parental perspective and to some of the comments that he made, would he care about any of that? No. He knew where his daughter was finally after, close to a month of not. He figured out where she was. You don't want to wait an extra second, right? Like that extra 10 or 15 seconds that it takes the police to get out there could be the difference between her coming back alive or not. So you know where your child is, you go and get him. I'm not mad at him for that at all.
No. Oh, absolutely not.
Compromising with respect to the crime scene.
Yeah, I'm just curious about moving forward with prosecution because, with these cases, of course, you'll have her version of what happened, what the father may have seen. Hopefully this tipster will be part of the evidence gathering. But again, it's about now we've charged someone and moving forward, especially if there's a bigger syndicate involved, which we do not know. We don't have any idea on that. Just thinking about the prosecution and the strength of the evidence. I mean, it seems to me pretty strong evidence that that's where she was found. Now, Phillip, here's the other thing. As you know, on social media, many people are vocal. Some have been very vocal and critical of this case, claiming, she went willingly. And here's my problem as a parent. A 14-year-old, especially if she does have challenges, very real, life-threatening challenges like a substance abuse. Yeah, we all should be worried. She should be everyone's child. And I don't think we should be saying, well, just because maybe she ran away, that we shouldn't be paying attention and helping. We need to have more compassion.
You have certain. I was looking in the comment section of the father's post, like specifically kind of looking for those people. They, of course, in any venue, right? Like whether it's this situation or any other, crime that we've covered or other serious things that happen, you're always going to have those people that are going to put in those negative comments, either so that they can feel as though they can get themselves some attention when everybody starts turning on them, or they can somehow or another feel important in a life where maybe they otherwise don't, right? But I think, to your point, to sit up here and start lambasting a family that may be dealing with a troubled teenager. And certainly if that is in fact the case, this wouldn't be the first family in the history of this country that has been an issue, right? Like anybody who's raised teenagers, or anybody, Anna, who's been a teenager themselves and remembers what we put our parents through. Yeah, there are certain levels to it, right? But if she is in fact dealing with a substance abuse issue and or some other mental health, emotional, oriented issues, to put blame on her and say that she's willing, it for me, just there's a lot of salt that's ingrained within an accusation like that, especially again when we're talking about a 64-year-old or people of that ilk that are taking advantage of that, right? Taking advantage of a kid that may be troubled or that may be dealing with these emotional and or substance abuse issues. That's highly problematic. And it's highly problematic. And that's why you're having so many investigations into these different syndicates and sex trafficking rings, because sadly, you do have a lot of grown people, a lot of adults who can't wait to prey and take advantage of people just like this guy's daughter.
Exactly. As he calls them, the creeps. And they're
sick. They're sick.
Absolutely. So she was finally rescued on January 3rd, to give you the context here. January 3rd of this year, 2025. And Frank said, like you shared, Phillip, he could not describe the feeling when he grabbed her and was able to hold her and know that she was safe. So she has since, according to what Frank has posted on his Facebook, she is in a safe place right now, receiving a lot of attention and help in the care of professionals. And of course, we wish her, the best recovery possible. There's one more thing that I want to bring into the mix, only because it's been discussed. And again, this isn't a judgment thing at all, but it's there. So the parents have also been criticized because, according to the New York Post, they have an OnlyFans page, and they allegedly have posted adult porn. And of course, people will then start pointing fingers at the parents. And this is what Frank told the New York Post. In addressing this head on, quote, he and his wife have some porn videos I made in the past that have nothing to do with my daughter. We are consenting adults. I'm putting that out there because it's part of the discussion about what's happened here, and because he addressed it head on. Mm-hmm. I am not judging. That is not for me to do. We're sharing this reporting with you as part of the big picture of what's been going on and what Frank and his family have addressed publicly. And that has been part of the criticism as well. Right or wrong, well, I'm not judging here. I'm not judging at all. But man, this family's been through the ringer.
Yeah. I mean, listen, when you, unfortunately end up in these situations where you have to put yourself out there, and he did, for the purpose of this situation, trying to find his daughter, people start looking around. People start looking into you. There's just those kinds of people that don't have anything better to do in their lives than find ways that you're not perfect. We all aren't perfect. I know you aren't, Anna. You can certainly trust that I'm not. It's just part of the human experience. But, now, unfortunately for him, because he's not the perfect parent, because the tattoos are all over the face, maybe him and his wife did have this whole situation with OnlyFans. Like you said, now it's just like, well, okay, especially like these kinds of people in society. Now we don't have to care about that. Who cares? Like, of course, they're like that. So that's why their daughter is like that. Let's move on to the next thing that I can criticize or critique or what have you. Instead of just like, again, at core, looking at what we're dealing with here. I don't care what's going on in this little girl's family or, what ultimately is going on with her. Being in a situation where you have these older, like you say, creeps taking advantage of that and preying on that, that's a problem.
Yeah. A big one. Brings us back to compassion. Always compassion for the survivor and the victims. That is the core value of this podcast. It's the perspective from which we look at all of these cases. She's 14. She's 14. She is a baby. Yeah. I'm sorry. She is. So let's talk about the accused here. Francis Buckheit, 64 years old, of Islip, was arrested and charged with second-degree rape, kidnapping, and child endangerment in relation to this incident. Police say that he was also charged with a DUI because at the time of his arrest, he was slurring his speech. This was reported by News 12 Long Island. And then yesterday, January 9th, a grand jury indicted him. Now, Phillip, I realize that the DUI and all of these charges is probably, it would be the most minor of the charges. However, there's something about that intrigues me. Mm-hmm. It intrigues me because if, as alleged, this 14-year-old was being kept in a drug-induced state in order for someone to sexually take advantage of her, and then the alleged perpetrator appears to be under the influence, how does that work in this criminal case?
Like you said, it's just kind of like a back part, but could be an importantly threaded part of the prosecution's narrative at some point as more of these details unfold. I mean, look, just the way we would think about it at surface level now is you're coming back to the dock, getting ready to go on the boat, right? You potentially are hammered or in some way inebriated and about to go back into this boat and deal with this minor. That's a bad look. It's a bad look. And, it kind of plays into, again, just this readiness to go in and inappropriately and illegally prey on this 14-year-old.
Oh, my stomach turns just thinking about all of this. Francis Buckheit has pleaded not guilty to the charges. He is currently being held without bail, at least at the time of the recording of this podcast. His attorney, Danielle Papa, told reporters that he's, quote, emotional, he's upset, and maintains his innocence. Her name sounds so familiar to me, the attorney.
I don't know. You know, some of like the Long Island attorneys, my practice is like more in the city,
Yeah.
right? They have their own bar out there, especially when you go to Suffolk. So I haven't dealt with her on anything specific. However, I think she was court appointed, right? So I don't know if he's retained his own attorney at this point or if he has the ability to. We'll see.
Mm-hmm. The DA, Ray Tierney, said, quote, "I thank God that this child is now safe, but we're going to certainly look into the circumstances behind how she went missing and the responsible parties." I thought that was very telling, how she went missing.
I mean, that's a critical part of the story. I mean, you started it with our discussion today, but since we know, and it seems undisputed, that she wasn't dragged out of the house screaming, I guess they're going to start to figure out, well, like who's cutting the ankle? Was there the ankle monitor? I'm sorry. You know, was there a plan, you know, prior to all of this to cut the ankle monitor and do whatever was done? Like we have no idea. You and I are about a week away from almost having to have a part 2 of this conversation because there's going to be so many details that are going to unfold that will start to give a little bit more context. And then, you know, not everybody's having these kind of conversations 30,000 feet above. We can just much better see like, oh, wow, that's really messed up that happened, right? Or that person coordinated for her to be able to run away from her family or whatever it may be. We'll see.
Yeah, and that ankle monitor could provide some crucial digital forensic evidence, meaning where she traveled, where she was, at what point it was cut off.
Right. Yeah. Is it cut off in the driveway outside of her house? Is it cut off at some point by the motel? I don't know. But, you know, certainly they'll be looking at her movement up and until it was cut to see if they can start to use that to put stuff together.
Well, it is time for our comment section. These are the crime cases that you all are talking about on our social media. And here's our producer, Will Updike. Will, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Phillip. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Will. Good to see you in 2025.
Yeah, it's been a while, and I feel like it's been forever since I've seen you. We were gone for a couple of weeks, but we're back, and we got a good one for you. I'm calling this one a case of taking Takis Fuego too far. I'm just going to give an editorial note here. If you don't know, if you're unfamiliar somehow with the snack Takis, it's kind of like a rolled up tortilla chip. Essentially, it's a cylindrical thing, and it's kind of coated in like tahini and like a mix of like tahini and say the flaming hot Cheeto stuff. It's like a spicy kind of like limey snack. It's very, very good, but it's also important to know for this case. Anyways, this comes.
But wait a minute, I don't know what this thing is. Does it come prepackaged or do you?
Yes, yeah, it comes in a bag. It's a chip. You know, it's just like instead of being, you know, like a flat tortilla chip, it's kind of it's rolled up. It's like rolled up.
Okay. And don't you all hate me because I don't know what this taco thing is? Okay.
I can't believe you don't know what Takis is. You live in Los Angeles.
Is this horrible? I'm sorry. You're all going to judge me and hate on me right now.
Well, you know what?
I'm a Lay's potato chip kind of gal. All right. Just leave me alone. I like my simple Lay's potato chip, the lightly salted. Go on.
I was going to say you're too refined. You're too
refined. A Lay's potato chip is the working man's potato chip.
Fair enough. I like a little bit more flavor, so I'm a Takis fan, but not in this instance. This case comes out of Greene County, Missouri, where a woman has been sentenced to 12 years behind bars for arson, and she used a bag of Takis chips to help ignite this fire.
For God's sakes, that's so frightening.
Right? And you're going to figure out why, and you're going to figure out how this was all confirmed here in just a second. But 43-year-old Patricia Faye Williams pleaded not guilty initially to these charges before having a change of heart and accepting this 12-year plea deal. I think that might have been linked to the case, which was scheduled to go to trial next week. She just took this plea deal on Tuesday of this week. And according to a probable cause affidavit, this all unfolded after a woman called 911 on the afternoon of August 11th of 2023, claiming that a woman who she was able to identify as Patricia had set fire to their home. I know what everybody's going to be wondering, and I don't really have any information on motive, so I'm really sorry that wasn't in the probable cause affidavit. Obviously, there was no trial, so there was no mention of anything of that. So you're going to have to insert your own reasons for why a person would do this to another person's house. I'm sure anything you can come up with will be better than something I could make up. So an officer was already in the area sort of investigating this smoke. I guess it could be seen. And they responded to the blaze after this 911 call. They found 3 people outside of the home. And another one of the victims outside the home here also confirmed that Patricia was the one who had in fact set the fire. And police are able to find her fairly quickly. And right away, she's not really helping her case for innocence. When officers detain her, she apparently had soot on her face. She was complaining about smoke inhalation. So because of these factors, they take her to a local hospital to get her checked out. And while she's there, just compiling issues here for Patricia, it's revealed that she also has multiple warrants out for her arrest. So it's not going good here right off the bat. But let's get back to our crime scene where officers are now. They're interviewing these victims. And they, like I said, they were able to identify Patricia, and they reportedly saw the way this fire started. They saw her pouring gasoline from a soda bottle onto clothes and the floor of their laundry room. And then they saw her light a bag of Taki chips on fire before tossing the lit bag onto the gasoline. So she used this like a great big match to get this accelerant and everything sort of going. But luckily, none of the victims were hurt, and everyone who was in the home was able to escape unharmed. So, that silver lining there. A part of this, though, that really cracked me up is like when police heard about this, like this Takis chip bag igniting a fire, one of the officers allegedly conducted a field test and determined that, in fact, a bag of Taki chips could support a flame. So good to do your due diligence there, especially if this was to ever go to court. There's not going to be a glove don't fit situation with the Takis bag. So Patricia, she's questioned by authorities at this medical facility, and she said she knew that this could happen, and she used the Takis chip to start the fire because she knew they would support combustion because of the grease content. So she's really thought this out. I don't have any information on her background of employment history. I don't know how you come across this fact. I'm very interested if this was, a popular internet video or something. I have no idea how this thought would even occur in your mind. But she also admitted to authorities that she had purchased $2 worth of gasoline as this accelerant for the blaze. Cops look at the surveillance footage. They're able to also confirm that. Filling up a soda bottle with $2 of gas, you would think would raise some questions.
At the gas station, yes, of course.
Yes, I have no idea how much $2 of gas gets you in Missouri and California. Not much, less than half a gallon. But so she's taken into custody. She's kind of already admitted to all of this. And she was held without bail because a judge deemed her a danger to others. And like I said, she did initially plead not guilty, but she accepted this plea deal for about 12 years behind bars. As I said, still no motive. But I thought it was an interesting case. It's one of those things like I just don't know how people are figuring this stuff out. Like do you think she practiced this with a different bag of Takis at some point to see if it would work? Do you think this was a dry run? I'm just not really sure. There's internet videos now of like people putting a blowtorch to basically anything. And it is interesting content, I guess, but not if in the wrong hands.
I'm speechless.
It's so bizarre. It's very, very bizarre. Anyways, we got some great comments on this one. La Casa, I don't know if they've tested this, but they said Doritos work too. I guess like maybe anything. I guess really it must just come down to the grease content, right? Like that's what's setting fire. And those are, grease fire, kind of hard fire to put out. You can't put water on it or it'll, splash the whole thing all over. So I don't know. Raymond S says chemical science, which, I don't know if Patricia had a background in this. I doubt it, but it is interesting. It is interesting. Moto Sunset had another theory on how she perhaps might have learned this. They said she watched a survival show about how Takis are covered in oil and can be used to transport fire. And instead of using that information to save her life, she used it to destroy her life. Amazing. Which this does seem like kind of one of those weird survivalist sort of tips, right? That you might see on the internet. They're like weird things you never knew you could do with a bag of Takis.
Well, I don't think it's helping Takis, with their promotions.
I don't know
and
that it's hurting.
Well, I don't think it's helping.
Because like I said, they do have like a spicy flavor, and there is also a fuego flavor. So I don't know. I don't know.
Let's just say it's not enticing me to want to open up a bag to figure out what's in this flammable bag.
Because there's enough grease to start a fire. You're a little put off by it.
Yeah.
But like you said, I get your point, William. Like, is there actually any bad marketing, right? So it's like, whereas it may not be Anna's flavor, there are people, that eat the chili peppers or what have you. They say, hey, this might be my chip,
I mean, I'm definitely going to think about it anytime I eat a bag. I'll be like, I hope there's not a spark nearby. I don't know. Right. But it is also an interesting anecdote that you can bring up anytime you're eating a bag of Takis, you're in conversation with with someone eating a bag of Takis. So I'll file that one away.
You might want to be careful.
Yeah, right. I guess I should be careful who I give this information to. D Screaming had a comment that I like. They said they're not that spicy. Come on. Which I think it depends on your spice level. I'm now curious though, Anna, about your Lay's potato chips. Do we think that they have enough grease to start a fire?
Well, it's very possible. And I also like to buy the Trader Joe's version, which is made with olive oil. And then Whole Foods has their own version with avocado oil. I'm just letting you know that I eat other types of chips than but they're all basically
always just like straight potato chips.
Yeah, I do like Doritos. I will say I've always loved the Cool Ranch. Okay, but that's about as exciting as my life because I don't eat spicy food, so I don't like anything.
Oh, gotcha. Really. Okay, so then maybe Takis wouldn't really be for you.
Yeah. Like I always did like a good cheese doodle.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Love a cheese.
But not those spicy Cheetos. Like I can't do that.
Yeah. No, that's fair. I mean,
that's just not me.
Yeah, it's different for everyone, I guess. But that is going to do it for this week's comment section. I want to thank everybody who sent those in. You can do that over on our YouTube community page. We're also everywhere across all social media at My True Crime News. We'd love to hear from you. But until next week, hey, don't do crime.
Oh, Will. Will is so funny because now I refuse to say the don't do crime thing. I'm like, you know what? I've said that long enough. I inherited that phrase and Will has taken it over as if we must somehow always keep it in the program. I get that. Historical homage.
I like it.
Well, always, Phil, thank you for joining us. It's always wonderful to have you on, Phillip. It's amazing. I love working with you. And I'm always really blessed that when I'm in New York, I get to do a podcast with you. In person.
Likewise. It's been nothing but a pleasure over these years that we've been working together. We talk about tough things, at times, but it's to your point always good that the conversations are being had because, a lot of these families do need the spotlight. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we just always have to remember to have some compassion for one another. We are all imperfect. We need to have compassion at a time of tragedy. Really, really important, more than ever. Phillip, where can people follow you, find you? You have a very successful practice in New York. I love watching your Instagram, especially on the days where you're like day after day after day going to court and then you're driving and it's the traffic. And I feel for you. It's like, when will his trial ever end?
Oh, goodness. Yeah, you're talking about the 7-week trial that I was on at the end of last year. That, thank God, is finally over. But you can always find me, anybody that's here in New York. We're right 48 Wall Street. If you happen to be in the financial district, don't be afraid to holler. And with respect to social media, across platforms, you can find me at ESQ Hamilton.
Fascinating. At the time that you were on that trial, I wanted to talk to you so much about everything that was going on, because I know you're always in all of those jails and detention facilities. I mean, for heaven's sakes, it's like Manhattan and Brooklyn have become the epicenter, right, of all these alleged criminals that are making national headlines, right? Luigi Mangione, Sean Combs.
Yep. No, the Brooklyn Federal Detention Center right now is like literally just off the hook in regards to the people that you have in there, from like a Hollywood, from you never thought in a million years you'd see them in there, but they're in there now. I mean, that's the hotspot. It's crazy.
Amazing, 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 amazing. Well, please, I really suggest to everyone to follow you, follow your law firm. You all have some very interesting cases, both in the criminal and the civil courts, and in both state and federal. So it's just always fascinating to see what you all are working on. Great cases all over the place. So I encourage you to follow Phillip, and he'll also pop up all the time when there are criminal cases nationally on. You'll see him on NBC, you'll see him on ABC, CNN. You're everywhere. It's wonderful.
We're busy, blessed, thankful. So
yeah, terrific. And
I'm here.
Well, we love that. You can find me at Ana G News, Anna with one N. You can find all our socials at My True Crime News. We've made it super simple for you. This episode of our podcast, we have so many episodes. We've got hundreds of episodes of podcasts because we've been doing it a while here, and we cover a lot of cases. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, because that's what I love about that, is that we have a great conversation. It is a very vibrant and vocal group. And so I always love to hear what you all have to say. Also, sign up to receive our newsletter at truecrimenews.com. So, thank you all so much. This is True Crime News, the podcast. I'm your host, Ana Garcia, and we'll see you next time.